So it's been a year since I've had the Super Patriot Mark II, as we like to call it, the Byrd. And I want to tell you a little bit about what my experience has been like the past year, flying it, taking it to STOL competitions, to the highest airport in North America, and a lot of other things. Now, I have absolutely fallen in love with this airplane, and because of that, I am the demo pilot, I'm the sales pilot for Patriot Aircraft, but we're gonna go through and talk a little bit about how I built the airplane based off the mission set that I have, and the experiences that have happened over the past year with an airplane as capable as this. First off, before we get into the build process, I want to talk a little bit about what I do with the aircraft so that it makes sense on why I put the components in that I do. Patriot Aircraft obviously has some very basic things they do in the fact of the shape of the aircraft and the wings and things like that, but there's a lot of options as far as what you put onto the airplane. And unlike some other companies, Patriot is a completely custom build airplane. Every aircraft is one of one. It's built to what the consumer wants, right? And so for me, I take this aircraft cross country quite a bit, right? I travel long distances. I wanted something that could have a little bit of speed. Additionally, I have two boys aged 7 and 9, and I want to be able to throw them in the back seat and take them places and go on adventures with them. I wanted something I could compete in STOL competitions with and go out and try to see how this airplane does in a STOL. It's not STOL purpose built because I wanted a little bit more speed. And then lastly is I wanted something I could carry a lot of things with. Right? I often have a lot of bags or whatever because I'm gone for long periods of time, or we're carrying extra equipment or whatever the case may be. I want to be able to carry a lot of stuff without putting like a pod on the bottom or something that just adds a lot of extra drag. And so that was kind of the design challenge that we had. We started from the ground up, and the first thing was the tires. I was looking anywhere between 26 to 31 inch tires. I'd flown 35s on another Patriot and wound up losing like 10 to 15 miles an hour on it. And based off the distances I traveled, I didn't really want to lose that much. Plus the fact that I fly here in the Ozarks, I don't really need giant, I'm not going bouldering in my airplane, but I want to be able to handle some rough terrain. So what I wound up settling on was Desser 29-inch tires. They have tubes in them, which have pros and cons, but they're big enough to handle pretty much anything that I'm going to deal with, and while at the same time not being so big that I lose a ton of airspeed. And I would say between that and some of the other stuff that we have that I'll talk about in a second, I'm generally cruising somewhere between 125 to 130 miles an hour true airspeed in the airplane. Moving up from there, the wheels. So I wanted 10-inch wheels because I've seen a lot of aircraft with these really big tires and little tiny 4 or 6-inch wheels on them, and I just think it kind of looks silly. So we went with 10-inch magnesium wheels from Behringer. I just think they're the best in the market right now, so that's what we went with there. We also went with the Behringer brakes. I like the linear application of them, meaning that like when you apply the brakes, you get kind of a linear application. It goes up very smooth all the way down, as opposed to some other aircraft brakes that I've flown where you apply the brakes and all of a sudden you get a big spike in kind of braking resistance. Moving up from the wheels, I decided to go with a titanium landing gear from Acme. It's provided both strength and lightness, plus you don't have to paint it or worry about it rusting or anything like that. So the titanium landing gear has been really good. I've had some pretty hard landings intentionally in this airplane, and it's handled it just fine. But then we needed something that could absorb that impact as well. And so the Acme Black Ops shocks were just really the best on the market, and decided to go with that. And they have handled a lot of hard landings really, really well. While I do a lot of on-field stuff and there's tie downs, I do go to a lot of places that don't have tie downs, and it's always a pain to get them out. And sometimes with really strong winds, you just want to be able to stop the airplane immediately. So a parking brake was really important. It doesn't normally seem like something that would be a big deal, but for me and a lot of stuff I've done, it has come in incredibly valuable. Continue to move up in the airplane, I wanted something that could be adjustable. So when I'm flying and taking off, I want to be a little bit further forward, have some brake control, but then I want to be able to slide the seat back when I'm cruising around and going longer distances and don't need that control over the rudders. And so the seat is adjustable, and one of the really cool things about that is that we've been able to fly people that are as short as like 5'1", 5 foot, and then I've had people fly this airplane that are like 6'4", 6'5", and they've all fit in it because that seat being adjustable just provides a huge value to it. So I really enjoyed putting that in there. We put a custom stick in there just to make it feel like I'm flying back in the fighters. So moving on with the panel, I had a bit of a debate as to what to put in. I'd flown a lot of Garmin, I'd flown a lot of Dynon, and elected to go with the Garmin for a couple of reasons. And I'm really happy the way it turned out. We've got a G5 on the left-hand side, G3X in the middle, GPS 275 just to the right, and a full autopilot suite just below that. The fact that Patriot doesn't use circuit breakers, they go with a vertical power unit, just led for a really clean display, and everything's set up with a lot of redundancies that I really appreciate. One of the reasons I really like it is that I can fly this aircraft without an iPad and happen to use ForeFlight like I do in the rest of my general aviation flying. And the reason for that is because I have obviously all of the ADS-B is set up there on multiple displays, and I can set it up however I want. I've got all of my instrument approaches on there. I can couple that to the autopilot and have the airplane fly me down to minimums. It's wild in this airplane because I can shoot LPV approaches, GPS approaches, down to 200 feet, and I can't do that in the Airbus that I fly. I have more capabilities in this airplane, this backcountry Cub airplane, than I have in my airplane that carry 200 people around the world in. So the Avionics actually got me out of a few what could have been some bad situations. There was one where I was heading south out of Bentonville, and I was clear, I was VFR, things were going fine. I did have to cross some of the Ozark Mountains to be able to get to where I was going. And the air was clear, but I had a massive storm to the west that was moving in, and I had a pretty good gap between that I was gonna be able to shoot between. Well, as I'm flying, approaching that gap, it, of course, closes up on me all of a sudden. I had an out that I could go land at, but the problem was if I landed there, I was immediately gonna get hit with just a torrential rain and potential hail, lightning, and all that stuff that I really didn't want to put myself or the airplane through. And so it was awesome because I was able to just call up approach, pick up an IFR clearance, punch through where the clouds had come together, but the storm wasn't too bad, and get myself to the other side of it. Another situation I had, I was flying back from my military duty. I was VFR on top and needed to pick up a clearance in order to drop down, shoot an approach into Bentonville. And when I did that, the weather was great. I was sitting about 45 degrees Fahrenheit at the altitude I was. Picked up the IFR clearance, started to drop down, and unbeknownst to me or any forecaster out there or anybody else that was flying, there was an inversion layer that had happened, meaning that normally as you drop, the temperature increases because it gets colder as you go higher. But in this situation, as I dropped, I went from 45 degrees down to 28 degrees, which was the opposite of what it was supposed to be. Was not in the forecast. Nobody else had experienced any icing, or at least reported the icing. And as I dropped down into the weather, I start almost immediately gathering ice on the aircraft. I've got full IFR, heated pitot heat, but there's nothing else heated on the airplane. So leading edge was starting to collect ice. I was getting ice on the windshield, and I was getting a little concerned about it. So in that situation, the autopilot was flying the approach. I filed a PIREP, and of course, as soon as I filed the PIREP, everybody else started filing that they were also getting icing. It just happened. But fortunately, the autopilot was able to fly me down the weather. I shot an LPV all the way down to mins. Once I broke out, obviously I didn't have to worry about icing anymore because there wasn't any active precipitation. But I was able to land, and despite the ice buildup that was completely out of my control, no way I could have forecasted that, the airplane actually handled it really, really well. And having the IFR capability to drop down and get below it helped prevent VFR up top being in a really even worse situation. Continuing to move up on the aircraft, the AOA system is something that I think is absolutely vital, particularly when you're flying in the backcountry. You have a lot of experience, you get to know the airplane really, really well. It's nice because you kind of feel where the aircraft's at, but I have a system called Alpha AOA that I put, and it's a heads-up display that goes in front of you, and you calibrate it to different flap settings, and what it does is it tells you where your real-time AOA is. Now, I already had one installed in the Garmin system, but that one always lagged on me a little bit because there's multiple diaphragms that have to be adjusted for it to give you what an accurate AOA is. And I wanted that instantaneous feedback. If you lose your headwind real quick, right, there's a wind shear, or you're doing accelerated AOA, because a lot of times in tight valleys, I'll have to make some tight turns to get back around where I want to land. And so having that instantaneous AOA displayed right in front of me where I'm not looking down, I don't care about what the density altitude is, I don't care about where my CG is, what my gross weight is, the AOA on the wing, the angle of attack, is the only thing that matters. And that is such a safety increaser, such a huge advantage to having when flying in the backcountry. I really, really love that system. I'm glad that Patriot put that in there for me. When I first got the airplane, I had converted one of my old Air Force helmets into a helmet that I could wear for safety when I was doing STOL competitions or some more aggressive flying. And it did not honestly work very well. So I was really happy to upgrade my helmet to a lift helmet. It's full carbon fiber, it's light, it's got light speed in it, and it is just a great audio system. And it's a great helmet that's nice and light, it's breathable, it's got really good crash impact resistance, and that's been a huge game changer when I'm flying in the backcountry, just from a safety perspective, from a comfort perspective. And so that was like, while that's not an airplane thing, that was like a really nice thing to have with the airplane. One of the criteria that I want to have is to be able to carry a lot of stuff really easily. And one of the solutions that people will have for that is they put this cargo pod on the bottom of the aircraft. And that is great and all. It's got some straps. It increases drag quite a bit. It can be kind of cumbersome to get access to. But I wanted something that I could easily just load a bunch of stuff in and take a bunch of stuff out. And so Patriot designed this system for me that was really cool. We call it the turtle deck. Literally, you unclasp it, you slide back the turtle deck, and you just have the ability to put all kinds of stuff back there. I put bicycles back there. I've had just tons of bags. CG can become an issue, so you gotta make sure that you put the heavier stuff up front if you don't want the CG to be too bad. But I put a lot of weight back there, and I've never had an issue where it's been a bit of concerning. Just general aviation understanding, when you have a further aft CG, if you do get yourself in some type of spin, then you may not have the nose authority to get the nose down to recover from that spin, so always something you want to be careful of. But I can see when I go hunting, packing out deer, elk, or whatever, putting some plastic down, putting that in, just makes a huge game changer. I've been able to go out and go camping. I have a tent, I have a cooler, I have chairs, food, all kinds of stuff to go camping, and it's nice being able to just throw all that stuff in. Once you get there, unpack. And one of the kind of unintended consequences of that is that there's 7 feet of space there once you remove the back seat. It's just a couple of Velcro straps and it pulls out. And I've actually put a camping pad down and a sleeping bag and use that as my camper. So I've just slept in the airplane like it's a camper. It's kind of cool and really nice if you ever get caught at an austere location, you don't have a tent with you. There is a place that you can lay down and go sleep in, which is kind of nice. Moving up onto the wing, so Patriot already extends their wings a little bit to give it the appropriate wing loading for what these aircraft weigh. This aircraft is anywhere between 1,000 and 1,100 pounds, kind of depending upon for the empty fuel weight. We added a little bit to it when we went with the new paint scheme. Just the paint weighs a little bit, but compared to most Cubs that are out there that have a smaller wing than the Patriot, when those aircraft are 800 pounds, the smaller wing makes sense. Well, Cubs have gotten heavier over the years with the more advanced technology and some of the stuff going on, but they haven't really adjusted the wing size. And so having that wing loading is really nice. And one of the questions I had to ask was, do I want leading edge slats? For me, I wanted to do some STOL. I can still take off and land this thing lightweight and under 100 feet. So to me, that was good enough. I didn't need to go out there and win every STOL competition. And I didn't want to lose the potential speed cost that you get when you add the leading edge slats because I do a lot more traveling. So decided to elect out of the slat option. One thing though that I did want, because I do a lot more cross country, like long distance flying, is I wanted to be able to carry a decent amount of fuel. So we put some carbon fiber fuel tanks in, and each one of those hold 22 gallons, and pretty much based off the way they're set, they're all usable. So I've got 44 gallons plus whatever's in the lines of fuel, which is a lot of fuel, especially when I get to the engine and we talk about what my fuel burn rate is. So let's move up to the engine. It's a balance because I wanted a lot of power, both for the STOL competitions and to be able to fly fast, but I didn't want to add a big 380, 390 or larger engine in it that was going to weigh down the aircraft, burn a lot more fuel and everything like that. So Lycoming makes a great engine, but there's a company out of California called Lycon that for a very long time has been doing port and polishing the engine. They've been putting nickel plating on it. They've been cryogenically freezing the parts so they can run higher compression ratios and get a lot more power safely with still a good TBO out of a much smaller engine. And so what we have is we have a Lycon IO 320, and 320s normally push, 145 to 160 horsepower. And I've got 197 horsepower in this. Not only that, Lycon also shaves off some of the components of the engine that really isn't necessary. And so compared to some of the other Patriots that are out there, with that engine, this prop, and a gearbox for the constant speed prop, we've actually saved 12 pounds on this airplane on the old IO 320. It's a huge advantage of the airplane of just continuing to keep it light. So we've got 197 horsepower, but how do we push that? I really wanted a constant speed. I'd flown a lot of fixed pitch props in the backcountry or ground adjustable props in the backcountry. And ground adjustable props are great and all, but it's really nice to be able to take off on a short distance and be able to cruise fast. When you adjust the prop on the ground, you get one or the other until you make the adjustment. And so what we like to go with is a constant speed 3-blade whirlwind prop. It's the largest one that they make, and it does a couple things for me. One, it allows me to go fast, allows me to take off in short distance because of the constant speed aspect of it. And you don't see a lot of 3 blades on backcountry Cub type aircraft. And one of the advantages of that is that when you want to take off short or you start getting the tail up for whatever reason, you're braking hard, you're trying to get the tail up, your average blade length is a lot shorter, and so you really don't have to worry about any prop strikes. Oftentimes, if you see some STOL competitions, people will be getting that tail up and the prop will be getting pretty close to the ground. And yeah, you have to get pretty aggressive to do that, but you can strike the prop. And for me, that blade is so short that I would basically have to go all the way onto my back for it to be a threat. So a lot of advantages in that. I like the Whirlwind prop, always looking at whatever is best on the market, but for me, that seemed to be the right prop at the time, and I like the way it's been working so far. So from front to back, this whole airplane is a lot of carbon fiber, right? From the spinner to the prop to the cowling to the floorboards to the turtle deck, even the back area where the jack screws at towards the elevator section. All that's carbon, it's easily removable, it keeps it nice and lightweight. And so I've really enjoyed having a really lightweight airplane, but they can still carry a ton of stuff. But the big picture is, this is how I built my airplane based off of what I want. We've had customers who are looking to, they're professional mountain bikers, wanting to hang mountain bikes on the wing so they can just get to their place and go ride. People who are fishermen that want special fishing poles that go into it, or hunters that want to be able to pack out their stuff. So I think the cool thing is that no matter what you want, you build the airplane the way you want, and you get to go on the adventures you want. So what's it been like owning this airplane for the past year? Where have I taken it? What have I done? What kind of adventures do you get to go on? So I got the airplane back in October of last year and had the airplane. I'd flown some other Patriots before that, but I grabbed my son, took him out of school for a day, and we immediately flew down to Sulphur Springs, Texas to go to the national championship for National STOL. So for that experience, we loaded it up. We camped right outside the airplane. My son and I had a great opportunity to just kind of spend a lot of time together. I wasn't out there to compete or win. It was a brand new airplane. I was going to play it safe. I think I'd have to take a look back at what the shortest takeoff was. I think it was like 67 feet that first time, which, you know, for an airplane that's not purpose-built for STOL is pretty dang good. So went out there. It was the first chance to really do these STOL competitions, and it was just a really great bonding experience with the son to be able to go out and do that. We went from the STOL competition and immediately came back to Bentonville, and they just happened to be doing a field day. So on that field day, they were doing spot landing competitions, they were doing a flower to drop competition, and so I was like, all right, let's go play. I will say the spot landing competition was a little bit unfair, being in this airplane going against Cessnas and Mooneys, and there was a Cirrus out there trying to do spot landing competitions. It was not quite a fair competition, so I was able to take home first place, but the one that was a lot more fun was the flower drop competition. The flower drop competition, we had these bags of flour, and we got 2 passes, and we had to drop in, you know, at a certain radius. Those of y'all who have hung out, y'all probably seen like pumpkin drops or something like that. And so I had my buddy Tyler in the back seat, prior military guy, and so we were trying to calculate the trajectory of where to go to. And then we had a spotter, Zach, up on the porch of the FBO, and he was telling us on the radio like where we're dropping at. So we were able to really dial in the shot and pull first place on that too. But it was fun. We had the family out there, the kids checked it out. So living in the Ozarks with this airplane, we spent a lot of time in the Ozarks, just traveling around, flying a lot of different places, camping, meeting people, going to fly-ins, and we spent a lot of time at Byrd's Adventure Center, my favorite place to fly in the world. I know Flight Chops has done a lot of videos on that. He came out and got to fly the airplane around there with his family. It's just a real special place. I remember there was one where we went out and they had just had a snow. And it was like about, you know, a couple inches of snow, maybe 2 inches of snow, and it was perfect. Like nobody had touched it because nobody's going out there to fly. And so went out and got to go fly around and play around in the snow. We were drifting in the snow, we were taking off, getting wingtip vortices from the fresh powder that was out there. It was something I was cautious about. We went really controlled in the way that we handled it, but it was a really fun adventure on that. So while I absolutely loved the performance of the airplane and how the aircraft handled, and I could get myself out of potentially bad situations and put myself in really unique positions, one thing I didn't love about the airplane was the paint scheme. We thought the monochromatic design would be cool, and it just was not what we were looking for. So we put out a competition. I'm not the most creative person, and I know that most of y'all out there on the internet are. And so I put a challenge out on Instagram. I was like, hey, I'm gonna repaint this airplane and I need ideas. And it was awesome. We got a couple of hundred inputs, but the one that I fell in love with the most was actually from two individuals that work at Thaden Airfield, my local FBO. Just on a random rainy day, they drew up this sketch of the Ozarks. And it really, based off where we fly and kind of what I love about this area, it just made so much sense. It was a bit crude. I mean, it was highlighters and literally cutting out, it would copy paste. So not something you can take straight to an airplane. And so we worked with a company called Scheme Designers, went through, I don't know, 10, 12 revisions on it back and forth until we finally got it exactly where we wanted. But then it's just kind of a picture on a screen, right, that you can print out. So then Patriot, Don, who's just an incredible artist when it comes to paintwork, was able to take the airplane and bring it to life. It took a little bit of time because there's 16 different colors on this airplane. And it took a while to get it done right, but the attention to detail was just absolutely insane. One of the problems we ran in is that we wanted to go to Sun and Fun with it. We wanted to go to the Bushwill Base Camp, which is the first year they've done that. And literally, while Sun and Fun had already started, parts of the airplane were still in the paint booth getting painted. So I flew out to the Patriot facility, was sitting around helping out however I could, finished putting the airplane together, and immediately took off to head out to Sun and Fun. The problem was that there was a massive line of thunderstorms between me and where Sun and Fun was, and we were already running late, and we were trying to get there as quickly as possible. Fortunately, we had the Garmin and the G3X and the full IFR capability that I was able to pick up some IFR clearances. I was able to use the onboard weather navigation along with some other tools I had available to me to get around the weather, to go under, around, over, really depending upon the situation. And we made it there just in time for the first kind of STOL demonstration that we're having. Once again, I hadn't flown the airplane a little bit, so I wasn't there to really compete that hard. Winds were a little challenging. We had some rolling winds over the trees when you got below about 50 feet. But it was a good opportunity to go out, showcase the aircraft, and I absolutely loved the way that the paint scheme turned out. We did put the airplane in competition for awards just to see, like, I don't know, it's a pretty airplane. Let's see if we can win any awards. I was really excited, both us and scheme designers, the ones who did the initial drawing, Don, everybody was really excited because we wound up winning the Outstanding Aircraft Award from Sun and Fun, which was really cool to see that all that hard work that a lot of people had put in paid off and that people kind of appreciated that. So when we came back from Sun and Fun, I wanted to try to fly the two individuals that Desi and Delaney, who had designed that initial paint scheme for them. I wanted to fly them as quickly as I could. So they came out and we went out and flew over the nearby lakes, did some backcountry flying, and took them down to Byrd's Adventure Center, which is really where the design of this airplane is based off of. So some cool things about this airplane is that the topography that's on it, like if you look down at the top of the wing, there's a river that runs along with a bunch of topography. Well, that is the actual topography of the Mulberry River, and Byrd's Adventure is actually situated right there in the middle of the wing, and it's not just any topography, it's the topography of Byrd's. And when you look at the profile view, you've got the mountains kind of from a grandstand perspective, and those mountains and that topography is the approach into the river strip into Byrd's. And so we decided to name this bird the Byrd, B-Y-R-D, for Byrd's Adventure Center. And so taking that airplane out with birds painted literally on it, calling it the Byrd, was just a really special event. It was a beautiful day. Pam and Zen, who run Byrd's Adventure Center, two incredible human beings, they were out there, and it was just a really fun experience to have everybody kind of together that had made it happen. So I had tested the airplane a lot in the backcountry to see how it handles in the Ozarks and flying over trees and short field landings and all these things, but I know that like not everybody who's going to buy these aircraft are flying in this situation, and some of them are flying at higher altitude, some of them are flying over, sea level and things like that. And we decided to put the airplane through a test. So we wanted to see how the airplane handled flying at the highest airport in North America. Leadville is just west of the mountain range in like Colorado Springs, Denver area, and its field elevation is right at 10,000 feet. If you have a little heat, it goes up even higher. Our density altitude when we flew out there was at 12,000 feet. We're actually hanging out with a good buddy of mine that flew F-15s, Rhett. He's got an extra and a bunch of other aircraft, but we were hanging out and decided to kind of fly around on the east side of the mountain range just to see kind of how it performed before popping over to Leadville. And we were flying around Pikes Peak and kind of doing some formation and stuff like that with Rhett's extra. And I was absolutely blown away because I was at 14,000 feet, actually 14,200 feet, and my climb rate was still 700 feet a minute. And we went up to 14.5 and flew over Pikes Peak, and the airplane had no problem, which, okay, sure, yeah, I've flown jets and I've flown different things that can go high, but what was really impressive in this airplane is that it doesn't have a turbocharger. It's a naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine that has so much power that even at 14,000 feet, it was able to still continue to perform and continue to climb. And I want to continue to take it into Utah and some other places that have higher elevations, but I was absolutely blown away at what both the wing loading and the high power performance, even at high altitude, the airplane was really, really capable. Once we knew that it would handle that altitude just fine, we went over to Leadville, through a couple passes and flew out of Leadville. And even with that, my takeoff roll was only a couple hundred feet. I was still able to climb really well. And we had a FPV pilot, Christian Ohala, went out there and he was doing a lot of chasing. And there's some really cool shots of him doing barrel rolls around me and kind of skimming some treetops. And even at 12,000 feet density altitude, the airplane flew way better than a lot of other Cubs that I've flown at much, much, much lower altitudes. It just handled it really, really well. So that was a fun trip to just kind of proof of concept that the airplane handled those high altitudes really, really well. So after Colorado, we hosted a STOL competition, short takeoff and landing competition with National STOL out in the Patriot Airpark, which is just west of Fort Smith in the Pensacola, Oklahoma area. And it was a Patriot Aircraft, Patriot Airpark joint host. And it was a really fun opportunity because we flew a lot of formation, really got to hang out, had a lot of camaraderie. There was a lot of rivers to go run and fly around in. And one of the things they have out of Pensacola is a lot of skydiving. So it was fun. We had a skydiver in the back seat, and it was the first time we threw somebody out of the Patriot aircraft. They skydived, and it worked pretty well. So I think we're gonna be doing that in the future. So I said I use this airplane for cross country quite a bit, and I live in Northwest Arkansas. My military duty in the reserve is in Wichita Falls, Texas, and so it's about a 7-hour drive. I've got a couple different aircraft I use to get there, but oftentimes I find myself taking the Patriot to go there, 350, 360 miles or so, and it takes what would be a 7-hour drive, even in this airplane, down to about a 2.5-hour flight. Which is nice. Now, I will say if you got 40 knot winds, it significantly increases that. But because I have the altitude capability, I can generally either fly low or fly high to find where the best winds are. And very rarely have gotten a really nasty headwind. If it's really rough, I'll take something else. But it is really nice, I will say, flying in the backcountry, being able to just fly around, and obviously it's stick and rudder skills. But when you're wanting to take the airplane somewhere, turn that autopilot on, being on guard, watching the ADS-B, relaxing is just a whole nother different way to travel, a whole different flight experience. So there's an organization that I help out with called Tribute to Valor. It's a nonprofit that takes underserved kids and flies them from around the country on Air Force assets, flies them to a location, and then from there to Houston to the NASA Space Center. Well, earlier this year, we had a big aviation event where we brought in C-130s, and there was military helicopters, and there was aerobatic planes, and I brought the Patriot out. And so that was a cool opportunity to have out, and the kids thought it was really cool. But it was really amazing because I had the opportunity to fly quite a few kids during that event and give them kind of their first experience flying in an airplane. And I get to fly, the Mayor, Branson, stuff like that. But I would say the one that provided the most honor was there was a Medal of Honor recipient that was there, that was help speaking to the kids and inspiring them and teaching them kind of the core values of what the Medal of Honor represents. And to be able to take the Medal of Honor recipient flying in this airplane, in the Patriot aircraft, just seemed very fitting. So from there, we took the airplane to Oshkosh, and that was a fun experience. We had the airplane out on display. It was right there when you walked in the main gate. And it was a lot of fun, but what I really enjoyed was towards the end of it, they always have the night shows. And the night shows, for those of you all who've been to it at Oshkosh, are absolutely incredible. My favorite part is kind of when the sun is starting to set, it's not quite dark yet, and you've got the F-22s or the F-35s or the F-16s that are doing their performance in full afterburner. And during the day, you can't really see that, but as that sun starts to go down, you see that full afterglow bloom. And we were fortunate enough to have a hangar on the end of the runway, and we hosted a big Patriot party there. So friends, families, customers had a big party out there. And once the air show started, everybody walked out into the grass, and it was just so cool because you're directly underneath the path of the most powerful fighter aircraft ever built, flying directly overhead in full afterburner, and you just see this 20-foot afterburner plume sticking out. That was a lot of fun. But I will say at the end of Oshkosh, I had showed up from Oshkosh just after doing a 4 or 5 day trip with the airlines. So I had all my airline stuff with me. We had a lot of signage and things like that. And I'll say I was really surprised. We were able, just with the turtle shell and the extended baggage area, just throw a ton of stuff into there, and the airplane handled extremely well. I was honestly really surprised. So flew it all the way from Oshkosh down to Arkansas without any issues at all. From Oshkosh, the next event we had was the Byrd's Backcountry Flying Festival. Historically, that's been called Arkansas, and we run a circuit around there, and it's just a really cool circuit competition between aircraft. Well, unfortunately, Arkansas no longer exists. The people who hosted it, it was just a lot of work for too many people, but Pam and Zen out of Byrd still run this flying festival. So that was a really good opportunity. We came out, we had a lot of potential customers that came out that we got to fly around, got to run a lot of rivers. Aaron and Paul, a couple other social media online influencers, they came out, we get to fly them around. We got to go to some sandbars nearby, and with a bunch, I think there's like 14 or 15 other aircraft that went out there, and just a really fun opportunity. That one was kind of the first time in a STOL competition where I've actually felt like I could try to compete. We had some pretty crazy winds that day, but I felt like, okay, I've kind of got this airplane down, I can start competing in the STOL competition. And we had Brian Steck out there in his completely customized 300 horsepower, nitrous oxide powered airplane. He did take first place, but there were other people out there that had some really impressive STOL built airplanes with beta on it so they can get reverse and all kinds of things. And it was fun because now that I had kind of got some experience under my belt, I was actually able to pull second place from that competition. So just kind of showcasing this airplane that can go far, travel, do a lot of stuff, can still actually perform in a STOL competition. So after we left the Byrd's Backcountry Flying Festival, we went straight to this thing called UpSummit, which it happens annually, and it's really the latest and greatest of what happens in advanced air mobility. So whether it's space or aviation or advanced ground transportation, there's just a lot of really cool stuff. And we had the Patriot parked right next to a SpaceX return vessel. So lots of space, lots of Teslas and all kinds of cool, new rockets and new unmanned aircraft and drones and everything. And there was the latest and greatest of what the Cub aircraft is. A little bit after that, Hurricane Helene came and kind of did a lot of devastation. A couple hurricanes passed through Florida, caused a lot of devastation. And one of my friends, Liam, who's the Mooney Anomaly, it's a really, really pretty Mooney painted, lots of publications behind it, but he wanted to get that aircraft safe. So he came up here, actually to this airport right here, and stayed here while that hurricane was hitting. And we took the opportunity to go out and do some formation flying together. We went out and spent a lot of time together flying the Patriot and really kind of getting his mind off of everything that was going on from kind of the devastation that was happening back home. Fortunately, the airplane was safe. His hangar was destroyed, but they're rebuilding and they're working on that. But some of the most fun things about this airplane are the ability to share it with other people, and particularly for my boys. I've got a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old, and very lucky kids in the fact that they've had the opportunity to fly in a lot of different aircraft, from carbon fiber P-51 Mustangs to traveling across the country in our Debonair, doing aerobatics in the Hyperbipe. But by far, their favorite airplane is the Patriot. I think it's a combination of the visibility, the fact that you're low to the ground, the turn radius is real small. It is by far their favorite airplane. And so it's not uncommon that after school one day, we'll just go out and be like, hey, it's a nice day, you wanna go fly? And we'll go fly in the backcountry. And being able to share those experiences are really well beyond any type of financial aspect. It's just experiences that you can't have any other way. One thing I forgot to talk about was that back when the aircraft was a gray aircraft, we had Steve, Flight Chops, if y'all know him online. We'll put a video up here so you can take a look at it and see. But he came out and brought his family out to experience Patriot, to experience the Ozarks in the backcountry, and spent several days. And he's got some pretty cool videos kind of showcasing his experience with it from kind of a non-biased third-party perspective of like, I got him checked out in the airplane and then gave him the keys to it, and he got a couple days just to spend time with his family and his teenage daughter and really enjoy the Ozarks, the Patriot, and flying in the backcountry. So one of the things that's really important is to make sure that whoever wants to buy one of these aircraft have all the support they can, from how they build the aircraft, what they're going to be doing with it. And one of our customers had some land. He was going to make a runway on it, and it's, could be a bit of a challenging. There's a fence in the way and some other issues. So I flew up there and got to fly around his property and find where some potential issues were. We identified a few trees that, if he cut down, would have significantly made the approach and departure safer, depending upon which approach way we came in. And so that's just kind of fun, being able to see the growth of aviation and see new airfields being put in and people being able to build on their property, build a new runway, and take off and land from their back door. So what's next for Patriot? For those of y'all who are in the Microsoft Flight Sim world, Microsoft Flight Sim 2024 just came out, and it has a huge expansion into the backcountry aviation. The grasses represent a lot more, the trees represent a lot better. You can get out of the airplane, walk around, set up your tents and things like that. And for those of y'all who know Trent Palmer and his Freedom Fox that he had, Parallel 42 designed that for Microsoft Flight Simulator. And their next release is going to be with the Byrd, the Super Patriot Mark II, the one that I fly. And they have worked hyper realistically to make every detail exactly accurate, from every pulley to every detail of the airplane, the sound from getting into the airplane to cranking the engine, the performance numbers, everything is exactly the same. In addition to the Super Patriot Mark II, the Byrd, they're also going to be including a very realistic Bird's Adventure Center, meaning that you can hop around the countless runways that are around there. Flight shops like to call it the STOL Gym. And so if you want to jump in and do what I do on a Saturday morning and go fly to Birds, check out the different runways, or go to Alaska, or go to the Pyramids of Giza, whatever you want to do. If you want to jump in and kind of experience the same thing as realistically as possible, that's a cool way to check it out. To follow along with the Flight Sim release, go ahead and subscribe to the Patriot email newsletter and follow Parallel 42 to see when you can fly the aircraft yourself. And if you're serious about building your own Patriot aircraft, fill out a request for a demo flight and come fly with me.